Hi guys, my name is Chad Barnier. Welcome back to another video. If this is your first time visiting the channel, then first of all, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome. And if you want to learn more about musicals and musical theatre and meet a whole bunch of other musical loving nerds like yourself, then consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any new uploads and being the first in the comment section when I do upload new videos. And remember, you can always follow me over on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at Chad Barnier. And now I post a lot of things over on Twitter. They're really funny, they're musical theatre related, and no one laughs at them. So if you could go over there and just do me a solid and follow me and then like all my silly jokes, that would be really appreciated. So on with the video. So I'm going to start this video with a little bit of story time. Earlier this year, I found a gentleman on the Facebook Marketplace, the glorious place that is the Facebook Marketplace, and he was selling vintage vinyl records, which we all know I'm a big fan of vinyl records. So I contacted the man and said, look, if you're ever selling or come across any musical records, I'd love to put my hand up to buy some, let me know, and I'll come check them out. And he responded and he just said, what do you mean by musicals? You mean like cats? And usually, every time I get this question, I always know that person isn't going to be a great resource for finding musical theatre records. But I said to him, yeah, like cats, but more like, stage musicals, Broadway, West End, all that kind of stuff. And he said, sorry, I don't think I have any. Fast forward about a month later, he contacted me and said that he had found a box of records that he thinks might be musicals, and I should come and check them out. He's only open for 3 hours on a Saturday, every second Saturday. I managed to squeeze in some time one day. I turned up expecting to find 2 or 3 records, including cats. When I got there, I was blown away. This guy had such an expansive collection of musical theatre records, but didn't know what they were. And because he didn't know what they were, and because I had been away and I hadn't been able to buy them, he was selling them for $1 each. At the end of the day, I managed to pick up, I think it was 63 musical theatre vinyl records for $70. $70. They're $1 each. It was actually $67, but I gave him the change. So I have a big box of vinyl records right next to me. I'm going to split this video into 2 because I just can't go through them all in one video. They're in no particular order. They've just literally been sitting in the living room and my partner's getting a little bit annoyed stepping over them every day. So let's have a look at them. So full caveat before we get started, there's about 63 records in here. I know about 30 to 40 of them. There's a lot that I've never heard of, some that I've heard of that I don't know anything about, which is the fun of musical theatre, especially being of a younger generation. There's a whole plethora of incredible art and performance for me to discover, and that's why I collect these records. And that's why, partially, I have this YouTube channel to introduce you guys to new shows. First record, and probably one of my new favorites, not new as in discovering it, but I listened to it a lot more recently, and I'm falling more and more in love with it, and that is Gypsy with Ethel Merman. So the original Broadway cast. This is Stephen Sondheim, Julie Stein. Sondheim took this job to learn how to write for a star, because Ethel Merman was a pretty big deal at the time, still is a pretty big deal. And this is the musical that came from it. So it's the life based on the life of Gypsy Rose Lee. You know the TV show Toddlers and Tiaras? It's almost like the original Toddlers and Tiaras. It's all about an overbearing stage mum forcing her children into show business for whatever reason. I won't spoil the show. It's one of my favorite Sondheims, and yeah, Gypsy. Really excited to have that one. Next up, we have Follies, yet another Stephen Sondheim musical. I don't know heaps about Follies. I know the basic plot, that it's old performers from the Ziegfeld Follies days have reminiscing back of their life as stars. That's about it. I don't know too much about it. I actually haven't listened to this yet. I've listened to some stuff on Spotify. I know that this is a much loved musical, but I will never profess to know everything about everything. So this musical I've spoken about previously in another video, in my top 10 musical theatre songs of all time video. I'll link it in the card up here, check that out. Cage Aux Folles. And it's both versions. This is an Australian version. This is the original Broadway cast, so that's George Hearn and Jean Barry, and Keith Mitchell and John Ewing. Don't know that cast, I'm sorry. Yeah, one of my favorite songs of all time, I Am What I Am, the big coming out song, and I actually featured it in the latest Try Not to Sing challenge video, which I will also link up here. So check those two videos out and check out Cage Aux Folles as well. This musical has such a special place in my heart. When I was in year 3, I performed in this musical as the Pharaoh, or the King. It is Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I have struggled to find records of this. I've come across one before, it's just not a very great version. So I'm very excited to have this. Yeah. Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice. So that's fun. If I do this, what does that make you think of? Hopefully it makes you think of Evita, not just a really bad impression of your Italian grandmother. This is, again, another Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice musical. This version actually has Patti LuPone and Mandy Patinkin, some of Broadway's favorite stars and some of my favorite stars. Really excited to have this one. So, Evita. So the next one is The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. I know nothing about this musical. I know that people like it. I know that they're singing in it. I also know that it's probably a pretty controversial title to name your musical. So, Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. It's a maybe, I have no idea from me. Next up is Applause. This is a musical I don't know the story of, but I am familiar with the music. So last year, my favorite theatre, or maybe earlier this year, I think it was this year, Hayes Theatre in Sydney put on a production of Applause, and I heard really great reviews. I was unable to make it, but I did listen to the cast album leading up to that show being put on, and I really like it. It's a really great cast album, but I know nothing about the story. So I've got a few more Rodgers and Hammerstein shows to add to the collection. This one is Flower Drum Song, and then we've got Carousel. This is my second version of Carousel that I have. I've got another one that I got in Japan. That's the Japan vinyl record video, so check that out up here. Two of musical theatre's favorite creators, Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein II. Oh, yep, and another Carousel. So, third Carousel on the list now. So this next musical is very exciting for me to have. I've been wanting this one for quite some time now, but it's one that I haven't seemed to be able to find out in the wild, out in the real world, until now. So I have two versions of it, which is really exciting. They were both in this collection. This is the original Broadway cast, and this is not. Meredith Willson. You probably know this musical. This musical is parodied all the time. So you'll see elements of this pop up in pop culture quite often. If you've ever seen the monorail episode of The Simpsons, that is a parody of The Music Man. If you're a Family Guy fan and you've seen the episode, Peter Griffin does a big musical dance number while playing football. He joins an NFL team and plays football and sings the song Shapoopy. And that's actually from this musical. The Music Man, Shapoopy, is a very famous number, and you might also be familiar with the song You Got Trouble, which is one of the big iconic songs from The Music Man. I think Hugh Jackman is actually about to start playing The Music Man in a production, which is really exciting, and I think he would be phenomenal at that role. So this is really exciting. This is my first ever Cole Porter musical, and that is Anything Goes. Cole Porter is one of Broadway's most beloved lyricists. One of my favorite things I've recently come across while researching Stephen Sondheim for a bunch of videos I'm making for the channel is that he said one of the best achievements and most rewarding things he's ever experienced in his life was surprising Cole Porter and impressing him with a lyric from Gypsy. So he was doing a run-through or a read-through of Gypsy while it was still kind of in production, and an old friend stopped by the show, loved it, and invited them back he and Julie Stein back to show Cole Porter some stuff. Cole Porter was quite ill at the time. So they showed Cole Porter the song, You'll Never Get Away From Me. And there was one little part where a particular rhyme utilized a triple rhyme, and Cole Porter at that time kind of exclaimed and was shocked and so impressed by it. And Stephen Sondheim said that was one of his favorite memories. It's so cool that someone that I look up to, Stephen Sondheim, looks up to other people like Cole Porter and be so moved by their approval because of how much weight is in that approval because of such fantastic achievements such as this. So that was a long tangent. So this is the Patti LuPone Anything Goes new Broadway cast recording at the Lincoln Center Theatre. Very, very excited to have that one. This is a Cy Coleman musical, who I am slightly familiar with, but don't know too much of his work. I do know Lucille Ball, but I've never, ever heard of the musical Wildcat. So that's one of the exciting things about buying vinyl records, is that sometimes you dig through a box of records and you only come across Cats and Jesus Christ Superstar, and that's fine. But sometimes you dig through a box of a random assortment of shows, and it gives you the opportunity to find something new, and maybe this is the one that I fall in love with next. You never know, but that is Wildcat. So if you've been watching my Try Not to Sing challenge videos, which most of you are here because of those, in the latest one, in part 3, you would have come across a song called Hello, Dolly. That version was from the Barbra Streisand movie. This is the original Broadway cast with Carol Channing. It is a David Merrick, Jerry Herman musical. Everyone working on this musical, everyone in the show is an icon of Broadway theatre. A little bit of a fun fact, the way I discovered Hello Dolly is I used to make websites for people. And I used to use a platform called WordPress, and it turns out that Matt, the guy who created WordPress, is a big Hello Dolly fan. And if you log into your WordPress account, on the dashboard in the top right-hand corner, there's a whole bunch of Hello Dolly quotes and lyrics that cycle through like every day or every time you refresh the page. And I never knew what it was, and I Googled it, and I saw in an interview that Matt was saying that it was a Hello Dolly reference, and that's how I found this show. And it's just one of those legacy shows like Oklahoma, like West Side Story, like Phantom of the Opera. Hello Dolly. So this is another Cy Coleman show that I know absolutely nothing about. I am discovering during this video that I am doing no justice to Cy Coleman, and I need to discover and listen to much more of his work. So this is Seesaw. I bet you have never heard of Seesaw. Let me know in the comments if you have. And yeah, so this is now been added to my list of things that I need to listen to. That is Seesaw. Yet another South Pacific. I now have 3 or 4 different pressings of South Pacific. This is the National Music Theatre Company pressing, and yeah, I guess we'll see how it holds up to all the other ones. So this next one I didn't know was a thing, but I'm extremely excited to own it. It is called Forbidden Broadway. So this is a musical review show. If you don't know what a review show is, it's spelled R-E-V-U-E, so you can look it up. A review show is almost like if you made a playlist or a mixtape, for those born before Spotify. If you made a mixtape or a playlist of all your favorite songs from musical theatre, and then you performed them somewhere. So this is essentially a living playlist. What's cool about this is that it features songs from a whole bunch of different shows, but it's also got themed segments. So there's an Angela Lansbury sequence, there's an Ethel Merman sequence, there is a Carol Channing sequence. That's really cool. It's got songs from Evita, from Annie, from Pirates of Penzance. So at the moment, while I'm making these types of videos for you guys, I'm actually doing a lot of intense research for some bigger deep dive video essay type videos. And one of the things that has really kind of caught my attention, especially owning all of these records, is the artwork of this gentleman, Ken Fallon. I'll try and zoom in and get a video for you. Essentially, this guy's artwork comes hand in hand with Broadway theatre. If you've ever seen some musical theatre records or playbills or cast albums, it's hard to not come across his work. And he's a fantastic illustrator that does a lot of caricature style imagery, and I would love to know and learn a lot more about him. So I'm putting together a video at the moment about him, which is super exciting. Keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, if you know anything about Ken Fallon, let me know. I would love to know your tidbits of information about him. That is Forbidden Broadway. I'm so excited to have that. So to follow up on Hello Dolly, yet another David Merrick musical, Sugar. So if you are familiar with Gypsy, Julie Stein, who did the music for Gypsy, also did the music for Sugar. And that concludes the entirety of all the information that I know about the musical Sugar. So like I said at the start of the video, there's just too many records here to go through it all in one video. I've got a couple more to go for the end of this video, but before I get to those, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of you watching. It is so exciting to have you guys all along for the ride and all you new subscribers. I can't tell you how appreciative I am of you for sticking around. If you like this video, I have a few more like it on the channel talking all about musical theatre vinyl records, and I might even urge you guys, maybe go out and look for some records of your own. Get a cheap little record player and start digging in some milk crates and wine boxes for your own musical theatre records. You never know, you might come across a new show that you've never heard of that you fall in love with. I know for me, I've fallen in love with so many shows that I didn't know were even a thing. But it's also a really great way to have a tactile experience with a show. I know a lot of us don't live in towns where we can get along to the theatre every week or every month or even every year. This is a great way to have a little bit more of a physical experience with the music without just turning on Spotify. Even if you don't have a record player, maybe just buy them and read the booklets and check out the cast listing. I mean, these were really cheap. These were $1 each. Some of them, like the most I've spent for a record secondhand is like 25 bucks. It's a really fun way to learn about musical theatre and start to discover this world that we all love so much. So this next one is Oliver. Actually, this is Oliver and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. So this was actually released by Disney, and you might recognize some names here. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was music and lyrics by Richard M. Sherman and Robert B. Sherman. So the Sherman brothers you'd recognize from The Jungle Book and Mary Poppins. So next up on the list is The Singing Nun with Debbie Reynolds. This is the soundtrack, not the cast album, so it's from the movie The Singing Nun. So it opens up to a nice little booklet here. You can see a bunch of photos, and it tells kind of the story of the Singing Nun. I don't know anything about it, just like a lot of these. So the second last show on the list today is I Can Get It For You Wholesale. This is another David Merrick show, and it was actually directed by Arthur Lawrence. I really like shows. One, I like just the bold red and white that catches your eye. But I also like shows that really invest in like putting a booklet and kind of telling the story. It means that like for people of the next generation or people who never get to see the show live can understand the context of listening to the songs. And the last show on today's video is Jesus Christ Superstar. If you've seen my other videos, you know I have several versions of this already, but I don't have this one. This is a different cover than I have. This is excerpts from, not the actual full album. Someone's written their phone number and stuff on the back. That's one of the fun parts of buying used records. This is actually pretty worn out and pretty dirty. So yeah, good fun. There we go. So that is the first video in this double video series of my massive musical theatre vinyl haul that I'm so fortunate to have come across. And so I have a question for you guys. I'm going to leave a list of all of the show titles in the description of this video. Can you copy that list and let me know which ones of these shows you've actually heard of? Because I mean, I consider myself pretty knowledgeable. I won't say I know everything, but there was a lot I didn't know. So let me know that in the comment section. What shows did you or did you not know out of this new collection of records? And stay tuned for the next video. I'll be filming that probably tomorrow when the sun's a bit more on my side. Thanks for sticking around. I appreciate you as always. Make sure you check out my other vinyl record collection videos up in the card or in the description below. And I'll see you next time.
You're a man who loves children. That's an important sign. Funny, I'm a woman with children. Small world, isn't it?